Everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. Before we dive into today's interview, please remember to subscribe to our channel. We've been doing a lot of New York Comic Con coverage, interviews, other things, going through the AFI list, whatever it is, we're trying to blast you guys with content, so please subscribe. You don't want to miss out, and it helps us grow our channel. Today's interview is with Monte M Moore. He is an incredible artist in pretty much any traditional medium you can think of. He dabbles a little bit in digital, but I don't need to explain it. He goes into it. Fascinating interview, incredibly talented guy. He's been on the scene doing art for just about everybody, and now he's pushing his own stuff. He's got like 9 compilation books of just his art out, not to mention countless comics, posters, other projects. He's molding things now. It's really awesome stuff. He shows some works in progress. He showed some behind-the-scenes things. He's even doing the interview from his studio, so you could just see that he's 100% legit. This stuff is incredible. He's actually doing kind of a virtual roadshow tour, I guess you could call it, to raise awareness for his Kickstarter on his new art book, but also just to kind of get the word out of him as an artist. And I thought this was a really good time to do it because the virtual Comic-Con has been really cool with all the panels and stuff, but one thing that we're really missing is that artist alley and being able to see talented people doing what they do. So having the chance to sit down and talk with Mr. Moore has been incredible, and also it kind of scratched that itch for the hands-on or eyes-on tangible art that you just don't get to see, and it's tough to seek out individually. Make sure you check the show notes and the comments, or the show notes, because we'll have all of his links there. He's got awesome stuff for sale, or just on his website if you want to check it out. I wanted to put more of his art throughout the interview in the video, but I wasn't sure what I could post and what I couldn't post, but he's got plenty on his own website, and I'd rather drive some traffic to him anyway. So check out the interview. It is through Zoom, and he does show some stuff to the camera, which is very cool, and just listen to this master of his craft go on about it. It's fascinating. How's it going?
Going good.
Yeah.
Working on my cover for Montage, and I've got a piece of Baroness going.
Oh, awesome.
As well, yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. Just to do an introduction, everybody, this is Monte M Moore, who is an artist, writer, sculptor. It looks like you do everything, so I guess we're going to have to dive in.
Man.
Yeah, seriously. So I guess the easiest way would be to go all the way back. When did you realize that you were an artist?
Actually, so I guess in high school, I kind of realized that was one of the things I enjoyed doing the most. I wasn't certainly the best at it, just an average high school kid who liked to draw. And I spent a lot of time doing that and taking all the art classes I could, and kind of realized that it gave me a little bit of an identity, like something like, oh, you're known as the artist. And, you know, friends and family members wanted to see what you were drawing. And so it's kind of egotistical, but it's like, that's kind of how it happened with me. That was like, wow, I really like being known as artist. And up until I was about 16, I wanted to be a doctor because the namesake was named after, one of them was a doctor. And then when I was 16, I was in art class in high school and discussing the whole doctor thing with some other friends in class. And I thought, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy being a doctor and blood and stress and drama and all that.
Right.
And I thought, I really love doing art. And I literally went home and I told my parents at dinner, I was like, I have an announcement. And they were like, what? This is kind of formal. Like, you know, put down their silverware. Like, what is this about? And my mom did a lot of fine art on the side, not as necessarily a job, but she painted and she drew and she had an art studio. And I said, I think I want to be an artist for a living. And they said, that's a great idea. We think you would love it. And you should go to college and you should pay for it yourself. And you need help, let us know.
Wow, nice. Okay. Because
So
my next question was going to be, coming from your namesake, was there pushback when you said, I want to be an artist? But I guess not.
No, and I actually at that time I think he had already passed away. But yeah, so I went to Colorado State University here in Colorado, and they had a really strong graphic design program. So my degree was in graphic design and illustration. And as it happens, I met a couple of guys while I was in college who were self-publishing their own comic book. It was going to be called Lords of Light. When it actually came out, it was called Lords because we had to change the name. And first I was hired to just color the cover. And this was before computer coloring. So I used my airbrush and I painted it. And then we all became friends, and I loved the idea. And I said, what if I airbrush the entire comic? So one of the things I did my senior year was I airbrushed this 22-page comic by hand. And we went to San Diego Comic-Con in 1993 and had our little self-publisher table. And we had, I don't know, I think 5,000 copies. And we were sure we were going to sell all 5,000. I think we sold about 1,000, actually, believe it or not. But
That's not bad for your first time out, though.
Yeah, a couple of things sort of timing-wise struck against us. And one, Dark Horse was coming out with their own imprint called Legend. It had the little Easter Island head, and we were called Legend Comics. So we got the kibosh put on us by them. And then there was some Roger Zelazny, never heard of, hardly before, novel called The Lord of the Light that was written in like the 60s. And there was some doofus who owned the rights to it. And then he came after us and said, you can't call your comic Lords of Light. So then when it came out, it just was called Lords. And then Diamond missolicited it as a black and white book instead of color.
After all that time airbrushing.
Yeah. And so even though the book came out in color, we got sales like it was a step above an ash can, like it was black and white. So we got hosed by like 3 different sides.
Yeah.
And we were like, wow, this really sucks. Rather than doing our own books, we should work for other people. So I started becoming more of a freelancer. And so I've been doing that since the mid to late 90s. And now I'm coming back to kind of in the self-publishing world with, I had a very successful campaign early in the spring, early on when COVID was hitting. I launched Loco Hero, which I wrote and did covers for and created. And then I have 2 other comics titles in the works right now. So I have Loco Hero number 2 that's being drawn and colored, which is this one right here. Loco Hero. And it's about a woman who thinks she's a superhero but doesn't actually have any powers. And then I also have a vampire Western called Blood and Bullets. And I have a sci-fi called Outpost Earth. And these are all stories and screenplays that I wrote years ago. Blood and Bullets is actually optioned 6 times as a film, but I got the rights back to it. And so I decided to make it a comic first. And then,
how does that concept not get greenlit as a film? I mean,
right, yeah. If you tell people, well, it's like Kate Beckinsale in the Old West. And they're like, oh, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. It writes itself, and Westerns are cost effective. Just go for it. I mean,
yeah. So I'm moving all of those projects forward. I'm kind of changing my focus a little bit more from being a full-time freelancer for everyone else to it's spending at least half my time being a publisher of my own stories, my own art. I do fine art. At art shows. I have my new art book that's currently on Kickstarter that's called Montage. And that's my 9th art book to be published.
Wow, yeah.
Years.
That's huge. Yeah, because I was looking on your website earlier this week, and it said, I think, 7 in your bio there. And I was like, wow, 7 books in just your art. But I guess it's 9 now, and that's a tremendous amount of art.
I probably haven't updated the bio because there was the first 2 or 3 were published by other publishers. Then I self-published one. Then a couple more were done by their publishers. And I really enjoy self-publishing because I get the creative freedom to decide what art goes in it, when it comes out, what's the size of it, is it hardbound, is it full color? And with the crowdfunding platform that wasn't available 20 years ago, it really does just allow us to be in the driver's seat with creative freedom and how and when we offer things. So it's been about 3 years, I offered a art book. My last one was called Cover Up, and it was a 25-year that I've done in comics and gaming and pop culture.
Yeah, it seems like you've been working in every field possible, which is awesome. So I imagine you have quite a following when you put out your own self-published stuff.
Yeah, it's a little bit from everywhere. The focus the last couple of years has kind of skyrocketed with comics, doing freelance covers for larger companies, for smaller companies. I'm a regular with Coffin Comics for Lady Death, and they have a great fan following. And so Josh has handed me a couple of things here. So this is the cover to Cover Up, which was a previous Kickstarter and is still available through the website. This is the 25-year retrospective. And then I still do, obviously, a lot of different covers. There's a Frazetta tribute that was for a title called The Salve. Right now, a lot of the covers are, some of them are more the pinup ones. This was a great cover for Coffin Comics La Muerta, and this is a jeweled metal cover.
Okay, yeah, I can see it.
You can or can't?
No, I can see the sheen when you move it. That's really cool.
Oh, yeah. And then this was a really fun one last year. This was 100th episode Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yeah, okay. IDW.
Yep, IDW. And I did that one for Mile High. And then actually this week or next, I have my first G.I. Joe coming out from IDW and Comics Beat, and we're kind of co-branding that. So that's actually going to be the first variant that I am not self-publishing that is a co-brand. So it'll actually have my Maverick Art Studio logo on the back of the G.I. Joe, and that's the first time my logo will ever appear on a well-known title as a sort of co-sponsor, I guess, of that variant.
That's pretty awesome. Congratulations on that.
So it feels like the last couple of years that there's been some good steps of moving forward rather than maybe working quite so hard for everyone else.
Yeah.
Taking a little bit more control on the publishing side. I do have a couple of projects that I'm working on that I can't show yet for The Mandalorian.
Oh, nice.
And those are fine art prints. So there'll be a minimum for.
Body. I think we're good to go now. You said you had a minimum order for the Mandalorian stuff you were doing?
The company that I'm working with is a Star Wars licensee for fine art prints, and we contracted for 4 paintings. And then if that goes well, then I would imagine maybe it'll continue with other properties, or maybe they'll just keep me on Star Wars if it goes well.
Nice.
But we'll see. Just because everybody loves Baby Yoda doesn't mean they want to pay fine art gallery print prices. We'll see.
Yeah. I think you'll probably have some good luck, though. That show was a monster hit.
Yeah, I hope so. I've seen it like the season probably 6 times while I've been working, so I know it.
I know they're coming out with a Art of Mandalorian book right now, so that should generate some more interest, too.
Yeah, I have the one of them that I just got because I had pre-ordered it is that one right there.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I just saw them talking about that at New York Comic Con.
Oh, okay, the art and imagery. Did they do more of like a virtual con deal?
Yeah, it was all virtual. It was just YouTube panels and then some like Zoom Q&As and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, because I had a booth there and we'll have a booth next year. They must have not asked me to do a panel, which I'm okay with. I had done one for San Diego a month or so ago.
Even with the amount of panels they had, it was way scaled down from the in-person thing. I think just the logistics of Zooming everybody is.
Oh, I would imagine the bandwidth and trying to corral. I mean, San Diego and New York are both just massive with the amount of artists and people involved. So
yeah, it was definitely not the same experience as being on the con floor and walking the artist alley and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, I haven't seen any of the virtual events, really knock it out of the park other than some of the publisher ones. I know Brian Polito does fantastic with his virtual events that I've been a part of regarding sales, but he also has such a loyal and branded fan base that they come right to those events with the exclusives, as opposed to when it's an entire show, people can just kind of come and go and check out a panel or whatever. But even when we offered some exclusives through the San Diego portal, I think we had a couple of sales, but it wasn't anything gangbusters or like being at a show, obviously, because I've actually exhibited at San Diego every year in a row since 1993.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
So, yeah, you went to school and you just hit it hard right out the gates. And so it doesn't sound like you had much of a slump when you first started.
I worked for the family business doing graphic design and illustration. And back then, you pretty much had to do all your marketing by mailing your samples to companies and then going to shows. Mm-hmm. And there was only a couple of shows in the country. So you could hit a Wizard World, you could go to Dragon Con, or there was the Chicago event in San Diego. And you just sort of worked all year long and hoped, that the show went well. So it was certainly a slow climb in the beginning. And I guess my whole career has kind of just been the long, slow, there was never an overnight success or here's your breakthrough and everybody knows your name,
Sure, yeah.
You're J. Scott Campbell or anything like that. But because I also go to gaming shows and I worked on D&D and Harry Potter and I did art for Playboy and dozens of games, Magic the Gathering, Legend of the Five Rings. When you spread yourself around, you're spread thinner through a bunch of different layers. But then when one takes a hit like gaming or comics or just the whole industry, I went and painted motorcycles for a couple of years. I literally only went to 1 or 2 cons a year. I just went to Gen Con in San Diego, and that was it. And all the rest of the events were motorcycle shows because people, when the Orange County Choppers was huge, painting motorcycles was big business and way more money than painting a comic book. Instead of a couple $100, people paid thousands, if not tens of thousands, to have some of these motorcycles that were on TV painted.
Nice. And do the airbrushing skills you learned for comics and graphic design translate over to sheet metal?
Absolutely. And so I came painting on motorcycles, and I'm a motorcycle guy myself. And so other than switching over to urethane paints, which is what you have to use for metal, and learning a little bit about the process, I had a much different skill set with hand painting and airbrushing. And at one time I had 12 pro builders as clients.
Wow. That's awesome.
The one year there was a motorcycle show called America's Top 50, and I painted 4 of the 50 bikes I painted that were in the show. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's big exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, so you mentioned
most of the magazines I had art in there because they were getting art from the caliber of an illustrator, not a bike painter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could do it all.
Right.
So you've done comics, gaming, motorcycles. I also saw you do sculpting. Or are you painting the sculptures?
I'm sculpting. And so I have 2 bronzes that are out currently that are more of wildlife. So I have a ram and a buffalo. And those are also 2 of the schools here in Colorado, one that I went to. And I was interested in sculpting, and I wanted to start out small because getting into bronze casting is crazy expensive.
I'm sure.
Some of the sculptors I was at shows with said that they had $100,000 just tied up in their samples when they have a one-off of everything sitting around their booth. So I was like, oh man. So my first sculptures are about the size of a baseball or softball so that they're not too expensive to get samples of. And so I'm moving in that direction. And then I also want to utilize some of the newer technologies like 3D scanning and 3D printing to make maquettes and things like that. So I just finished a piece that I haven't shown yet, steampunk horse. And we're going to actually take it to be scanned tomorrow so that you could do the neck size up as a sample and you don't have to resculpt or do anything. So you can work like this if you want. And then you can actually look like that's twice that size.
Okay, that's cool. To kind of work more efficiently rather than
on me. I wonder if that's my connection.
Yeah, got a little jittery for a second again.
Oh, there you are. You're back.
Oh, okay. Just had to settle.
Yep.
So the sculpting is a newer endeavor, it sounds like.
Yeah, within the last 2 years, I've been an artist at a show in Arizona that's one of the top fine art shows in the country called the Arizona Fine Art Expo. And the show itself is 75 days long. And you are at the show and in your booth every day for 10 weeks.
Ooh, that's a lot.
Yep. And so it's a real commitment because I have to go to Arizona, rent a place, pay for my booth. And then every day when people come to the show, they get to see 100 different artists working live, sculptors, welders, painters, art. And it's not all wildlife. It's not all Western. It's everything in the fine art world. And so I met some sculptors that just really inspired me. And I had heard many times that, it's beneficial to an artist and a painter to be able to understand and work three-dimensional. And so I just went and bought some clay and the ram. I'll when Josh comes back in, I'll have him grab one and I'll show you here.
Yeah, cool.
I'm sitting right over here. And, I worked on it. And then there were some other artists that helped me out and taught me the mold making process. So it's not something that I want to do myself, like going through all the mold making.
Yeah.
Because you take that to people that's their specialty and say, make me a mold. Because every time a bronze made, a wax has to be made. And so that wax gets melted out and that's what becomes your bronze. And so that has to be done every single time. Hey, Josh, can you hand me the ram right there, the King of the Rockies? Oh, there we go. So this is a bronze ram head with a kind of a green patina. And this is a bronze, and it's got kind of a piece of rock stone base. And so this was what I sculpted out of clay. And then the clay sculpture actually gets ruined and goes away when you make your master mold. And so I have these available on my fine art site, which is called theartofmontemore.com.
Okay, that's very cool. That looks really good. So you also mentioned, you kind of briefly mentioned you're writing and you're producing your own comics now, and you had your Vampire Western optioned a few times as movies. It looks like you've written a lot.
Yeah, so I did. I made a movie called 1, 2, 3 Scream. The original title was called End of the Road, and it had Doug Jones, who people would know from The Silver Surfer and Pan's Labyrinth. He's the main bridge alien on Discovery.
Okay.
He played Abe Sapien in Hellboy.
Oh, okay.
So he was a lead character, and then we also had Robert Picardo and Michael Dorn, also both from Star Trek, who were in the film. And it was a low budget sort of thriller comedy with a supernatural elements about a bunch of ghost hunters.
All right.
And we actually got into 6 film festivals.
Oh, nice.
And won 4 or 5 local and regional awards for cinematography, writing, best picture. They were on some of the more local ones, but the name's escaping me. But there was actually one of the bigger ones out of Las Vegas that was pretty hard to get into, and we were happy that we were accepted into that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's hard to get into film festivals because they get thousands and
with the technology today, I'm sure they've never had more entrants.
Yeah, that one was made in 2010, and then I still market some of my screenplays, and I have some connections in LA. But the goal with my comic stories, honestly, the end-all be-all goal is to market any of these as feature films and or TV series. So Loco Hero, I'd like to market as a television series.
Nice.
Yeah.
You said you made the movie. Did you write it, or you wrote, produced, directed? Like, what was your level of involvement?
I was the main producer. I was also one of the executive producers, which means you also have some of your money in it. And then I also wrote it. So
you were heavily involved.
Yeah. So and I was the art director.
Okay.
So I was on set. I was in charge of all the the visual aspects of the production. And we had, cinematographer, and we had a different director. And these were all people that I knew through some of my other connections in the industry. And we went and filmed it on the 38,000 acre cattle ranch that I grew up on as a kid. And at the time, we still owned it back in 2010. And so I wrote a script that could be shot there. Then we went and raised about $100,000 from investors, and we went and made the film.
That sounds awesome. And that's really, I love that. This is what I have. This is what I'm going to write to. Like, that was the Robert Rodriguez beginnings. Like, that's really cool.
Oh yeah. I have a script that is called Newton's Law that's under option right now by a guy down in Australia, actually. And at the time, the family business here in Denver, we owned 2 meat processing plants, and we processed natural and organic beef and buffalo and chicken and all that kind of thing. But the underground catacombs of this packing plant that was built in the 60s was creepy. I mean, people didn't even want to go down there. And so I wrote a horror script that takes place in the basement of a building because I knew I had access to one.
To a creepy basement. That's awesome.
Exactly. Well, because it was massive. The building was 60,000 square feet.
Oh, wow.
And
yeah.
So you could imagine the footprint of that and these old concrete catacombs and mechanical rooms and things like that. So one year when we were on our way to Gen Con, we wrote notes of this whole script over 18 hours. And then I wrote it into a screenplay.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yep.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your NSC tour series?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, obviously visiting you here and giving information on myself and the project. Kevin at NSC TV has arranged for some of the connections that he has so that I can come on and tell people about the projects I have going on. And the most focal point one is the 2 weeks that we have left on Montage, which is my 9th art book. And unlike my previous art books, which only focused on pinup and pop culture, this book also expands into the regions of wildlife, Western cinema, some of the art like Tombstone, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. A lot of films people would know that I've done artwork, just my own artwork for, as well as a little bit of the wildlife and things like that. So you'll see some of the sculptures. People can get sculpture awards. They can get commissions if they want to get, say, a hand-drawn comic sketch cover, or they want to get a remark in their book. We've had one backer who got one of the bronze sculptures, excuse me, that you saw. And so, all these Kickstarter campaigns, they're real labors of love. They take a lot of effort to put together and get out there, but with the support of the fans, you no longer have to go to an actual publisher, and you become your own publisher. And you get that creative control, which is a lot better. And you see, honestly, a lot more profits. A lot of my earlier books, they'd say, hey, let's do an art book. We'll cover all the costs of it, and you'll get 50 books or you'll get 100 books, and if you sell them, good luck. Maybe you make some money. It's a great portfolio piece. So, that's how all my earliest books were published, and they were great stepping stones in my career. But that doesn't mean you always made a lot of money on them as a commercial project, but the publisher probably did.
Right. And you're doing all the labor.
Right. Because you're doing artwork for 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
And, then suddenly, you hand it over to them. They do a layout and say, great, here's our order. So a couple of the early books were published by SQP, who had a Gallery Girl book series at the time. And I did some of their books as well. And it was still very flattering that when I was probably 25 years old, to have a publisher be like, wow, if you can turn out drawings of this caliber, we'll do a whole book with you. And it was great being able to go to conventions, and I'd have artists who were my art heroes who were 20 years older than me and go, oh my God, you have an art book out? I've been in the industry since the 60s and I don't have an art book out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow, really? So, you got to get the hustle on and get out there. And that helped me get a reputation for being reliable and high output. And, you just kind of started getting more and more work, and everything's a stair step on the clients. I think it was 2001 before I did my first licensed work with Lucasfilm. But it takes a long time. I'd already been in the industry for 8-9 years, even before that. And even that first job was still sketch cards. It wasn't like, hey, come do a movie poster for us.
Mm-hmm. Since things have progressed so much in the digital realm, are you still hands-on inks and paints and airbrushing, or are you more like Photoshop and Illustrator?
I use them for what they are best for me at. And this isn't a knock against digital colors, because I love what they do. And I've hired some great ones to work on my comics. Excuse me. I use Photoshop. I have a tablet. I have a Cintiq. I don't let technology pass me by. I'm by no means a Luddite. I have a giant command center here around me with monitors and screens and, all sorts of things. But when it comes to the final art, for example, this is a piece I'm working on currently that is a very sexy Baroness pinup that I started yesterday. And this is watercolor and airbrush. And I can also show you this is the mixed media cover for Montage. And as I mentioned, this book has pop culture, Western, wildlife, and automotive in the book. So I wanted to do a piece of art that is a combination of that. So this is in progress currently.
Wow,
and this is
great.
colored pencil, marker, airbrush, watercolor, and gouache. Here's a drawing for, this is the Bronco that Longmire drives in the Longmire TV series. And that's a pencil drawing.
Wow.
So I like the traditional aspects of having created something from nothing rather than manipulating a photograph. And a lot of Photoshop art today is a combination of photos. It's photo bashing and
filters and
cool filters. And suddenly people are like, wow, here's my comic cover. And I go, yeah, that was just done in Poser. You picked clothes for the girl. You didn't even make the clothes. I can do that too. And in 2 hours, I can have an amazing image. And so on the one hand, it disappoints me to see so many people going after the shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it's a way for other people to be creative and to be able to get their products out there. And it maybe gives them a sense of fulfillment and creating something. But for me, as a really hardcore traditional artist who, even though I love today's commercial artists and people like Rockwell and Soriyama, Olivia, I also respect Da Vinci and Michelangelo. And these guys wrote, they sculpted, they invented, they painted, they drew. And so one of my mentors, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, his name was Frank Cavino, and he taught Italian Renaissance portraiture. He taught pencil artwork. He taught sculpture. He wrote 4 books. And so he's a big influence on me. And so I try to follow in his footsteps and say, oh, well, Frank told me I need to experience sculpture, so I am. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the best in the world at it. You don't expect to be Michelangelo, but you should experience it because it might make you better at these other creative endeavors. And so I'm trying to keep artists like him and previous artists to keep that legacy of creative exploration alive instead of grabbing the lowest branch of art and saying, this is expedient, this is a shortcut. If you want to be really good at oil painting, honestly, it takes 10 or 20 years, in my opinion, to get to the level where I would want to be. And I still struggle with it. But if you look at the caliber of art that's turned out by maybe somebody like Lucio Perillo, oil paintings and things like that, I think he's a modern master. There's plenty of other artists who work as hard as he does, but there's fewer who get to that level. because it's a lot easier to use Photoshop to say, well, I can get that same look, and I don't have to spend thousands and thousands of hours and money and materials to do it. And so it's hard today as an illustrator to find that balance, because if a company comes to you and say, here's what our budget is, we just need this image, you get paid. Somebody's like, shit, I can do that in an afternoon.
Right. If you could do 2 in the time you doubled your salary.
Right, exactly. And, and it's about putting money on the table. There's a very commercial aspect. And the paintings that I'm doing for Star Wars, instead of taking me days, they take me weeks.
Right.
Like it takes me 2 to 4 weeks per painting, because I'll let it sit for a few days, I'll let it dry, and I'll come back and work on it. And the Baroness piece you saw, I started yesterday, because watercolor is very expedient, and there's no.
You got that look in a day?
Yeah, well, I was working until 3 a.m, but
wow, no, still, I mean, I would have thought that was weeks. I mean, I could see the texture and the sheen of it, like, and that was what I was going to ask next. Is you do all the traditional mediums? I'm not opposed to digital either. I mean, I'm not an artist like you are, but I do feel there's a weight and a feel to the real thing that you don't get from a reprint or from a digital, no matter how good.
Yeah, the thing is I'm always sort of brought back to the word facsimile. Something's trying to recreate the look of something else. And so when somebody works digitally and they say, oh yeah, I used the airbrush, and I want to go, no, you didn't. That's not, it's a representation of how an airbrush would work. But when somebody clicks a button and suddenly trees or gravel or bats or dragon scales show up, and they haven't had to sit there and paint 500 dragon scales like I've had to do, they're not actually learning anything as an artist. They're creating something that's a look. But have they really learned anything? Trust me, you learn stuff when you're trying to make a curved surface curved by dragon scales and being hit by light and dropped into shadow, and you have a lot more time to think about it. So for me, I'm getting better and stronger as an artist, and it doesn't matter, in my opinion, what medium I'm using, even if it is Photoshop. Now, I have done some commercial work for some breweries and for some other companies that were very nice digital illustrations. They are not paintings. I will never use the word painting for anything that's digital. Right. It's not better, not worse, just different, just a different media. But I don't think there's any such thing ever as called a digital painting, because there's no paint actually involved. You're just moving pixels. Yeah. And so I even have a little gallery page on my mavarts.com website that says digital. And when I was done with the images, there was 2 things that sort of struck me. One is I wished I'd had a paintings to sell or to hold up and touch. And so it left me kind of unfulfilled. And 2, you end up sitting in front of a computer the whole time. And I don't enjoy that. I enjoy sitting at an art table and a desk and surrounded by, all this stuff that you see behind me, like that's an art studio.
Yeah.
And I'm surrounded by all this kind of different stuff and airbrushes and everything. And so I just, sitting in front of a computer all day making art isn't my thing. I don't even really like doing logos that way. I'd rather draw it first, scan it in, and clean it up and be like, here you go.
That's cool. I really like that. I respect that attitude a lot. And I hope everything that you're working on is not a dying art that goes with generations. Like, I hope, there's younger people now who they know they can do it in Photoshop, but they want to learn oil painting and watercolors and that sort of thing.
I'm a little nervous, I'll be honest, because people want fast, and the next generation wants even more fast, and they're the zero attention span theater, crowd of, grew up with an iPad and things like that. I want it fast. I want it now. I want to click and, oh, look, it's blue, it's red, as opposed to saying, well, you're going to have to use this, and you're going to have 40 bottles of, this stuff to paint with. So we'll see. Time will tell. It'll never go away altogether.
No.
But even though I'm not even quite 50 yet, I'm a little bit of a dinosaur in the industry, being a pure traditionalist. And the only good thing to come out of that is that the people who really enjoy original art, the actual collectors, that most of them come to me. I still don't understand people who commission art to be digital for personal use, unless it's for like a D&D character or something.
Yeah.
The publishers don't care one way or the other. If they say we need a cover for Shadowrun, they're like, we don't care if you paint it or whatever. Here's your deadline. Here's your fee.
Yeah, it doesn't look good, fine.
Job or not. Yeah. But when it comes to traditional art, I can show art like this or the Baroness or my cover art, and I'll start getting inquiries from people. What's that original going to cost? How big is it? Can I make payments? All these kinds of things. So I make a much better living as an artist due to the hard work I put in and the fact that I have art to sell. And so I would say in general, out of the studio here, we ship original art almost every week.
Nice.
There's paintings and drawings going to somebody. And that's extremely fulfilling for me.
Yeah, I'm sure. And for people listening, you do have original art and commissions on mavarts.com.
And for the people who, I'm very active on social media. And so I have a folder on my Facebook page under my profile that's just a photo folder that says originals available. And I think there's 150 or 180 drawings and paintings that are available. And you can just click through and it says what it's for, what the size is, what the price is. And, you can buy a print for $30 or a book for 20 or 30, or you can buy a $10,000 painting or a $200 painting. If it's a little gaming painting or something I've had for a while, that stuff's very affordable. And
yeah,
honestly, I think I sell a fair amount of art because I try to price it fairly while still making a good living. Doesn't mean
the amount of hours you put in, you can't give it away.
No, you can't. And I had my decades where I was the guy who was doing $40 and $50 commissions at conventions. I did that. I paid my dues. Used to be able to get a whole big painting for, 300, not 3,000. But I'm also a much better artist than I was 20 years ago. And if that's a little bit more what the market bears, there's people out there who are charging 30,000 for what others would consider lesser work. And that's the world of fine art,
That's a world I don't fully understand.
Nobody does. Anybody who tells you they understand it, or doesn't matter if they've been in it their whole life, it's a crapshoot on why a Picasso is worth what it is and somebody else because they told you it was important.
I figured that's exactly what was going on.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody gave me a Picasso, I'd just turn around and sell it. The artwork from the period that he's known for doesn't do anything for me personally, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't enjoy owning a Rockwell or something.
Right. Yeah. You respect where it came from.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, do you want to let everyone know where they can find you? I mean, I don't want to eat up your entire day. I'm sure you're cranking stuff out.
Yeah, we can hit you with a couple of social media links. So my website is called Maverick Arts or Mav Arts. You can type in either one. That's also the handle for my Instagram page, which I'm trying to grow pretty rapidly because I wasn't very active on Instagram, and now I'm posting every day, and I've got 500 new followers this month. And then you can send me a friend request to Monte Michael Moore on Facebook, or just follow the artist page, which is Monte M Moore. There's a Maverick Art store. I have a store on both Amazon and eBay. If you search my name, it'll come up as Maverick Arts. So there's a lot of different products there. What else am I missing?
Your Kickstarter?
Yes, the Kickstarter. So that one's called Montage. You can search my name, Monte Moore, Monte Michael Moore, or just type in Montage, and it'll come up. It's actually top 20 right now in the illustration category. For I think there's 11,000 products in that category. That doesn't mean it's the most funded. I don't know what their algorithm does as far as the amount of backers versus the amount of money raised. So it's not raising millions of dollars, but I'm confident that the project and the product that we're putting out is going to be something that people will enjoy and I will be proud of. and that's what matters. And
For sure.
there's commissions available. You can get comic books, you can get previous art books, sculptures, and go all the way up to a really top tier commission. And there's even a few sketch covers available. So right now, the only commissions that I'm offering are currently through my Kickstarter. So if somebody would like to get a drawing or a painting for Christmas or this spring, or a painting of their grandparents or something like that, they can look at what those options are. They can message me and discuss what price range something might fall into. And I'm very accessible and easy to get a hold of through any of the social media platforms and through the website as well.
Awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time. It was a really fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
I loved your work. I was looking at it all week. So
right on. Well, I appreciate you taking your time to also help artists like me and others in the industry get the word out about what their creative endeavors and passions are. It's very much a team effort. I was listening to an audiobook this week, and there was this great African proverb, and it said, if you want to go somewhere quick, if you want to go quickly, go alone. And if you want to go somewhere if you want to go for a long time, you got to do it together.
Yeah,
you got to go together. And so
right.
I posted that on my page, and it's like, it reminds me of social media and how all of these products and podcasts and people helping marketing and sharing it out on Facebook. That's the world we live in. And, it's pretty fantastic and rewarding to have built a fan base for almost 30 years and have this kind of rock solid base where old fans and new fans together, you can do things very differently than you could do 20 years ago. And I got to tell you, it was a hell of a lot more of a struggle.
I'm sure it was. I find the social media marketing difficult, so I can only imagine when you were doing it all boots on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives you more of an understanding. And I hate to say it, but even at 49, I'm like, back in my day, we didn't have all of this. You couldn't just say, hey, I'm open for commissions. I'll draw a hobgoblin for $40. Now you can do that. You couldn't do that before. You had to be at it. or a comic store.
Yeah, I bet. Well, very cool. I hope the rest of your tour goes well. Want to see your Kickstarter get funded, so I'll be watching.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again. Take care.
All right. Take care.
Once again, that was Monte Michael Moore. Make sure you check him out online. He gave all of his contacts, Mavarts, MAVARTS.com. Has some awesome stuff on it for sale and just to look at. I really appreciate him taking the time, so thank you again for coming on to the show. I'm sure his Kickstarter is going phenomenal without us, but any little boost we can give him, all the better. Thanks for watching. Once again, please remember to subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it. Also, make sure you listen to Sub Wizard Podcast every single week wherever you get your podcasts. Sub Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get bonus shows, multiple, for it. Make sure you go to subwizardpodcast.com for reviews, recommendations, merchandise, and more. And we love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments or leave us something on social media. All the accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes.